My love, there's only you in my life, the only thing that's right. Ooh.
My first love, oh, every breath that I take, your every step I make.
Hey everybody, this is Panda, and you are listening to our third episode of this podcast, and we've actually come up with an awesome new name. It is BK and Panda's Batting Practice. So this is our third podcast, but our first ever under the new name of BK and Panda's Batting Practice, and this awesome name was given to us by Goldencane, and we're actually going to have a special guest on a little bit later to kind of help us dissect the World Series, and it's just because Goldencane came up with this awesome new name for the podcast, gave us this wonderful clip art, and it just was awesome, and we're so thankful for it. BK, what you kind of think of all this, and how are you doing at the same time?
Well, I'm doing all right now. I really thought it was great that Kane came up with a name for us as well as nice logo. I thought that was pretty cool of him, especially since you and I are too lazy to actually go through with doing that, or, don't have the skills to do that like he does. It'll be great to get him on the show, talk to him about how he came up with the name and the logo and all that, and break down the World Series. So I'm ready to get into it.
And our favorite topic, our favorite thing, and I think it's one of yours as well, and it is time for Team Takeover. So once again, we're going to break down each team, tell you what you should be doing as a team owner, and what you should avoid. So this is one of our favorite segments. It allows us to sort of step into your shoes, and I'm sure you guys are always interested in whatever nonsense we can come up with. So tonight we're going to just start with Oakland. I think Oakland is probably a great place to start just because they're in the American League. We've talked about in weeks past how the American League is a tough place to play, but Oakland is in the West. So maybe there's a little bit more of a window there than if they were stuck in the East. So Bragan, if you're looking at Oakland, kind of what are your feelings on this team and maybe their direction?
Well, the thing that strikes me about Oakland is they've just kind of been a basement dweller for the entirety of the league up until 2020. They ended up finishing above 500. Things were finally starting to click for them, and this year they just completely fell apart. Finished 59 and 103, and now it's looking like it's time to just pick things up and flip it over to the next page. And I think that it needs to start this offseason, sign a second baseman, and their pitching just needs to be revamped altogether. Get rid of the old guys that aren't producing or making too much money, just as we'll say every week for every team. If he's making too much money, if he's not producing, he needs to go. And that's the first thing Oakland needs to do. And definitely look at pitching this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Oakland needs to take their time. They've got a couple guys right now at the major league level that need to go down. I think you've got, second base Harrington, who they brought up to the major league levels. Honestly, he just needs to be cut. You need to go in a different direction. Go get a better second baseman. You can't win with guys like this. When you look over the rest of this roster, you've got shortstop Dylan Kohler. You need to send him back down. You need to give him time to develop. Pushing these guys at the major league level to just fill spots that they're not ready to fill can't help their progression as they get better and better. So I think Oakland needs to, like you said, take their time, do this right, let the old guys go, send the young guys down to continue to develop, find some filler pieces in the offseason to fill some of these holes. Now, there's a difference between signing a guy long-term for like 8 years, and there's a difference between getting a guy for a filler year, 1 year, 2 years max. That's what Oakland needs to look at doing as they continue to grow some of these younger players. So by saying that, I think who you need to build around is your third baseman, Diop. He's only 25 years old. He's got superstar potential. He's got great defense. The hitting stats aren't right there yet, but give him another 2-3 years and he will be. And I think that's what Oakland needs to look at. 2 or 3 years down the road, line up all of these younger prospects, get all your stuff in order so that at that time you can make a run.
Yeah, and when I'm looking at guys to build around right now for the Athletics, I'm looking at outfielder Derek Hill and starting pitcher Lawrence Slaughter. Slaughter right now, he's only 25 years old. He's got a 6.8 hits per nine. The only thing that worries me is the unpredictable progression. But at the same time, you still got him locked up for the next 3 years. See what he does with the progressing. See what happens. This year he started 29 games, had a 3.55 ERA, and it's really promising for the future here. Then you want to look at Derek Hill. Derek Hill led the team in batting average this year. Really the only bright spot to this struggling team. He hit 282 with 320 on base. You got him locked up for the next 6 years, making $10 million, which I think will end up helping him out in the end because he could be worth a lot more than that. So I do like where the team is going as far as youth. Like I said before, you just got to look at your pitching. They got a solid group of relievers right now. Their top 3 guys, they're losing 2 of them. But I think you re-sign Putnam and maybe get something for him in the following season. Right now, Putnam's 33 years old, but he can still produce at that age. And I think you keep him there, sign him to a 2-year contract, see what he can do while you're building up some younger guys in the bullpen and keep them going ready to sub in right when he goes down. You also mentioned building the team around Diop. I'm not sure if that's really what they want right now. Biggest reason being he's 25 years old. He should be ready to be there, but he's not. He only hit 218 last year, and he's only got 1 year left on his contract. Biggest thing with me is when I'm looking at a guy that you want to re-sign, you want to build your team around, I'm looking for guys that maybe already have 4 or 5 years on their contract that you can kind of bring in the pieces and mold to your liking. And he's only got 1 year left, so he'll be there. Free agent eligible 2022 season. It's not even guaranteed he's going to be around then. So for that reason, I'm not sure if Diop's the answer for the future.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I definitely see the problem with that. But again, you got to start somewhere if you're on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Hill is a great place to start in your outfield. But you got to address some of the infield needs. Clearly, they have a need at second base long term. It would make sense for them to try to get something done here before the extension to try to get him locked up so you at least have your third baseman of the next couple of years, because the rest of the lineup is just not good. You don't have any of those long term, and Diop's probably the only guy who you could maybe foresee being that long term. So I think it would do them well to try to lock him up. But again, like you said, there could be an issue with that. Because he may not want to stay around in free agency, and with this being a heavily negotiable league, that can cause a lot of problems. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason, but I think if you could build around him, that would give you a starting pitcher, an outfielder, and an infielder to sort of say, okay, here are our cornerstone pieces. So we'll see what they end up doing, but I agree. You got to sign him up before you can for sure lock him into building around him. And one of the other things I think is if you look at Alex Wood, I know he's your ace if you're Oakland right now, but you're coming off a bunch of terrible seasons. He's only got 1 year left on his deal. Is he realistically going to want to stay around in his prime on a team that's in last place? Probably not. So if you're Oakland, you almost have to look at when is the time to move him, and I think the time is now. I think you need to look at this year before the trade deadline, moving him to another team and addressing some of the glaring issues, whether it's getting a starting pitcher back, whether it's addressing your depletion at maybe shortstop or second base, or maybe even getting a first baseman. They need to do something at this point in time, and I think if you could move Alex Wood for the right price, it would benefit you, because again, I don't think he's someone you're going to be able to convince to stay in Oakland long term, but maybe I'm wrong. What do you think, Bragan?
I agree. I think Alex Wood is definitely someone that'll need to go sometime in the near future before they lose him in the offseason, don't get anything out of him in free agency. And I don't think that their rebuild is going to start right this second in this offseason, but rather maybe towards the trade deadline, because they're going to have some guys that are ready to wheel out and deal. And maybe this next, just before the trade deadline, in that trade rush, right before, I think that's when they'll make most of their deals. That's where they're going to make the biggest steps toward their rebuild happen. Someone else I'm looking at is shortstop Franklin Barreto. Last season, he only hit 187 with a 944 fielding percentage. That's just not going to cut it. When you're looking at his real stats, he's only got a 911 field percentage. He's not someone that you want to stick around. Even if he finally does come around and start to hit it a little bit, you're going to have to stick him at the DH. And when you're looking at DH, you want someone with more power than what he's got. Right now he's signed for 5 years, $10 million. I don't know if Yitz is running the team right now or not, but I wouldn't be looking at a 206 career hitter and paying him $10 million. He's someone that probably needs to go now or sometime before the deadline.
And when we're looking at teams that need to move certain individuals, I think you could point your finger at the Cincinnati Reds. They've got a guy, a catcher, Tucker Barnhart. I think just when I look at him, he's got fantastic real stats, but when you really dig into what his accumulated totals are, they're going up, but he's 30 years old. And again, Cincinnati is a similar team in a similar situation where they're at the bottom, and this guy only has a 1-year contract, so it might be time to move on from him and just, kind of pursue some other options and see what you can acquire. And I mean, when you look over the Cincinnati roster, this team has got some areas of need in some other places. So I think if you're Cincinnati, the first thing you got to do is start with Barnhart and see what you can get back for him, because it just seems like there's just something off overall about this roster.
Yeah, and like you said about Barnhart, he's got solid real stats, but he just can't perform, and that's just how it is with some of these guys on PC. You'll see guys that have a 330 real average and a over 1,000 OPS, and yet they can't get over the hump and get back to where you want them to be. And Barnhart's just one of those guys. You've only got him for one more year. This year might be the year where you want to trade him and maybe swap him out for some young pieces, as you always want to do for a rebuild. Something else that I'm looking at here, though, is they've got a lot of solid bullpen pieces. And I think if they maybe gave up one or two of them, they could get the spark that they really need on offense. Because that's really where they're really lacking here, with the exception of maybe a Raul Mondesi. And even he only managed to hit 268, not even 320 on base. Right now, re-signing, they've got outfielder Corey Collier, outfield. That's someone that you need to re-sign right now. And maybe re-sign reliever Majors. He made $14 million in his last stint. That's someone that I might be looking to re-sign, but if he's expecting the same thing, you just gotta let him go. Maybe hit him up with a qualifying offer, but besides that, I'm just gonna get rid of him if that's what he's expecting again.
Yeah, and as I look at this roster, I kind of shake my head and wonder what management is doing. You look at a guy like Abe Shanks. He's 25 years old. In the middle of his contract, he's a guy you can build around, yet you're not putting him in your rotation. I don't understand that. Why would you give Tanner Roark a spot over this guy? I mean, Roark is 34 years old. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And when you look at their bullpen, there are pieces that are in front of some of the other pieces. And it just seems like there might be something off with management, just a mismanagement going on in Cincinnati. As you look to build for the future, it's going to be tough if management isn't in line and actually putting the best players out there on the field.
Yeah, someone else I was definitely highlighting was Southpaw Abe Shanks. You look at his 2020 season where he started all but 2 games. He had an ERA under 4. He had a 14-10 win-loss record, and he was quite obviously your guy for the future. He was clearly going to be the guy that you are going to build your team around. And all of a sudden, 2021 comes around. They decide to throw him in for 7 games, start 1. He got rocked around a little bit, I understand, but he wasn't starting. In his only start, he pitched 6.1 innings, gave up 3 earned, struck out 6. I mean, not great, but is that any reason to take him out of your rotation? I definitely don't think so. Uh, I think whoever's making that decision to sit out Shanks needs to be fired, and I think you need to get him back because he could be your ace this year.
And then you make the case even stronger. Let's look at Tanner Roark's numbers, okay? Wins, 4. Losses, 17. You want to guess the ERA? 9.72. 9.72. And this guy got 27 starts this year with a whip that was 2 even. What is going on? I mean, how do you even do that? How do you allow that to happen?
Whoever is making the decision to keep Rourke in there and not put in Shanks seriously needs to be looked at again. I don't know who it is that's making this final decision to keep him out, but they need to go. It's absurd. At least this year, Rourke won't be on the team unless they're stupid enough to re-sign him. But it doesn't look like he'll be on the team for him next season and give Shanks a shot. And I think when they do, he's really going to shine, and they'll see that he is going to be their guy from here on out.
And I think this person needs to be checked too, because we've got no first baseman on the roster. That's a little bit of an issue. I mean, come on, what team comes into the major leagues and says, "Oh, you know what? We don't need a first baseman. We'll just platoon with our catcher, or maybe throw a second base over there every one, or maybe third base can be." I mean, come on, this isn't T-ball here. You got to have a first baseman on your roster, even if he's just backing up, a guy who's playing a secondary position. And they do have several young guys down in the minors, but, I mean, they're not ready yet. I see this as a need going into the offseason. And quite frankly, it was a need all season long, so I don't know why it even got to this point.
Yeah, once again, that falls on the coaching staff and the front office management in this case for not even – I mean, there's first baseman free agents out there. You can sign a guy off the streets for nothing and just throw him in your everyday lineup. You guys suck anyway. What's it going to hurt? I just don't understand why you don't even take the time to sign a first baseman. That's beyond me. There's just so many things that need to be looked at on this team this season.
Well, if we look at other teams that maybe have a little bit of a management issue, I think you could point your finger at the New York Mets. There just seems to be, again, an issue with just, okay, come on, we're in the major leagues, you're a GM, put a first baseman on your roster, okay? Or make it clearly obvious who you're playing at first base. New York Mets have no first baseman on their roster. They don't have a bunch of guys that are clearly capable and eligible of playing over there. What do you think is going on in New York, and how do you address it this offseason?
Their offense altogether is just pathetic. It's pathetic. I mean, look at the numbers here. They had, just from the guys that are currently on their team batting average, 223. Team on base percentage, 288. They mustered 172 home runs, and that's all thanks to Thomas and Franco. Without them, you guys are even worse. Now, going back to Franco, though, he had 28 home runs, excuse me. He had 28 home runs, 94 RBIs for you last year, but that's not $19 million worthy. The guys you want to be signing for $19 million are the superstars of the league, the guys, primetime guys that are going to be competing for that MVP trophy. And Franco is definitely not that. What I think is they need to move on from him. Put Wayne Mack in there because he is your guy from here on out. Mack is the answer at third base. You can trade Franco, get a good first baseman. You're looking at re-signing guys. Maybe Mejia, maybe. I say maybe a lot, and I don't care. Maybe Mejia, but I'm not even sold on that. I just really think that you just got to look this team over. And I'm just shaking my head. I don't understand a lot of what's going on with these teams. Even with the teams that we've discussed last week. And those were the worst of the worst right there,
Yeah.
And even their rosters are somewhat put together. You know, you don't have guys, no first baseman on the roster, or, you got a potential star pitcher and he's not getting any playing time. You don't see anything like that. At least those teams were putting together their best roster. They're putting up their best lineup rotation every game. And that's all they got. They gave it all they have. And that's when you got to take a look at tanking sometimes. And might not like to talk about it, but it's definitely there. When you're a team that's got a star pitcher, I'm sorry, I'm going back to the Reds because this is kind of pissing me off now that I think about it more. When you got a pitcher like Abe Shanks and you got a pitcher like Tanner Rourke, one star for your team, potentially. He's shown that he can tear it up in the limited time you've given him of one season. Rourke has not. If you're going to tell me that somehow, some way, it's okay to put in that 34-year-old hunk of crap over your top prospect, I don't think so. It needs to be looked at closer because I don't know if maybe nobody's paying attention to this team or what, but when you really get into it, there's no reason some of these teams need to be losing like they are. There's teams here that could be competing and maybe playing around 500 ball, but they're not just because these owners don't care. And that's what really gets under my skin. I don't know about you, but tell me if I'm wrong.
I feel the exact same way. And I think, it's sad, but we continue down the board and, we talk about more bad starting pitchers starting. Bart Foote. San Francisco Giants. He's 23 years old. You want to hear his stat line? He was number 2 in the San Francisco Giants rotation. 2.
Of course.
5 wins, 20 losses, a 7.39 ERA. 123 innings, where he gave up 175 hits. And if you're interested in hits per 9, that comes out to about 12.8. His whip was 1.82. You want to hear his real stats real brief here for all your PC guys? A 2.17 whip, a 14.9 hits per 9. And yes, he had 11.1 strikeouts per 9, but he was giving up almost 15 hits per 9 innings. This guy is second in the rotation in San Francisco Giants. When you look at the San Francisco Giants team roster, this team stinks. It's terrible. It's not even remotely good. This team deserves to be in the basement. Unlike some of these other teams that were just mismanaged, this team is mismanaged and horrible. I mean, you could just look down the list. Okay, they've got 3 outfielders on the roster. Yay. Are you telling me those guys are going to play every single day? One of them's 36 years old. The other one's 37. Oh, and get this. The last one's 40. What is San Francisco doing? This is just ridiculous. The rotation is just screwed up. The bullpen is a disaster. There's no young pieces. Everybody is like 25 plus, and if they're younger than that, they're just awful. They've got nothing in their minor leagues to bring up for starting or relief pitching. They've got like 20 outfielders. My goodness, bring one up. I don't know. This team is awful. I don't know who owns this team right now, but if you're listening, you need to take note and make some changes. And if you don't know what to do, in all honesty, seriously, please reach out to BK or I. Send us a message. We'll be super nice and super helpful, but you gotta get this thing turned around. This is a disaster.
Yeah, when I'm looking at, looks like the GM era is running this team. And looking at the real stats, the ones that matter, like you pointed out, you got Bart Foote, 15 hits per 9 he's given up. You got Hal Edwards, 10.7 hits per 9 he's given up. This is just real stats. It's just real stats. Don't get me started on the compiled yet. You got Gil Purdy, a relief pitcher, 10.5 hits per 9. When you look at the free agents, there's guys out there that are around 7.5, And I like to look at my pitchers, and I grade them by hits per nine, strikeouts per nine, and that's about it. I don't know how you do. I don't know how other owners do, but I found that, especially in this league, only thing that you really need to look at is the hits per 9 innings. And that's all I really look at. I could be completely off base. Maybe you look at something different, Panda, but that's definitely a start for this guy.
Yeah.
Because what numbers, looking at these guys, what numbers do you think he could be looking at for this to be acceptable? Maybe ERA?
I'd have to think that would be the case here in this situation.
Maybe for someone that doesn't understand or grasp what the stats that truly matter here, maybe he's looking at the ERA. Because if that actually mattered here, you'd have a damn good team pitching wise. Looks like.
Well, if he was looking at a ERA, you would think that Hal Edwards would be in that rotation, and he's not. So honestly, I couldn't even tell you.
I'm baffled, Panda. I don't understand what these guys are doing. And another thing I'm looking at, Jose Bautista, Jacoby Ellsbury, Melky Cabrera. 40, 37, and 36 years old. Isn't it time to hang it up? Isn't it time to let them go and do whatever they need to do with their lives? Those are your 1, 2, 3, the only 3 outfielders on your entire roster. Okay? The entire roster. You've got a 36-year-old, a 37-year-old, and a 40-year-old. You're telling me they're not going to get tired at some point? Oh, no, that's fine. We'll just throw in our freaking backup catcher. Yeah, I'm sure he'll do just fine. Can't get any worse for you, right? No. You know what? Okay. Here's what I'm doing right now. If I'm taking over the Giants, I want to trade Brandon Belt, Ken Giles. Brandon Belt is at his peak. He's already topped out where he's going to be. Right now, he's making $24 million until he's 39 years old. So he's just going to end up like Cabrera, Ellsbury, and Bautista. Get rid of him now, okay? Get rid of him now. You got Ken Giles. For some reason, he's making $29 million to be a reliever. $29 million a season to be a reliever. I don't get it. I wouldn't pay any starting pitcher in this league $29 million, to be quite honest with you. Maybe that's me. I don't understand it. It makes no sense at all to me why they'd even shell out this much money for these guys. But right now, the guy you want to build around is former Oriole third baseman Kevin Kirby. Last season, he hit 287 for you. Doesn't have a whole lot of power to him, but I think he's got a lot of upside. I'd sign him to a long-term contract. Please don't sign him until he's 40 years old, okay? Please. I'd say a maximum of 6-7 years. And don't pay him $29 million. Okay? You got that? I don't know if GM Era was the guy that signed these ridiculous contracts. I don't know if it was you, and I'm taking it out on you. Okay? And I'm sorry if it's not you. But you gotta fix this right now. End of rant, Panda. It's all you, buddy.
Oh, this is too much. Yeah, this team is man, it's so sad, but this roster almost needs to be gutted and restart. And the reason it's even sad is because they are in the NL West, which is one of the easiest divisions, where if you had a team that was bad like the Giants, they were still only 35 games out, which you're like, oh, they're 35 games out. Yeah, but look across the rest of the league. The Cincinnati Reds we're almost 55 out. Washington Nationals, 55 games out. Oakland Athletics, almost 50 games out. Kansas City, 52. Toronto Blue Jays, 70. You get the picture here. That division is one where you could turn around a team in a year or two and become a serious contender. But unfortunately, this team, I would say, is probably 4 or 5 years away from making any noise, being in any sort of position to contend, unless they get somebody to give them something stupid for Brandon Belt, which with $29 million a year, I really don't think that's going to happen. But, it's just kind of what it is.
They saved their money with Brandon Belt. He's only making $24 million a year.
Oh, he's making 24. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
He's a bargain, guys. Look at Brandon Belt. Somebody send this man an offer for Brandon Belt. Keep going, Panda.
Well, the theme of the night with all 5 of these teams, and I'd be curious to look across the rest of the MLB, is no solid first baseman. Is this an issue with the draft class or something? What is going on? Because if we look at our next team, it's San Antonio Bandits. Same thing. They have some pieces, but I just look at a guy like Alvin Warner, and I'm like, really? Really? You want this guy to be your everyday first baseman? He's 26, I'll give him that. But this last year, he hit 183. He had an OPS of 605, an on-base percentage of 223. In almost 400 at-bats, he only hit 16 home runs and drove in 48, and struck out 128 times. This is an issue, it looks like, across these 5 teams, but it's where are all the first basemen at? Are we going to have a strong free agent first baseman class? I sure hope so. Or else we're going to be looking at more Brandon Belts for $30 million until they're 45 years old.
I got to give a lot more credit to our Bregman than I have to any of these other owners. He's not getting singled out tonight. He's done a great job of putting together what on paper seems to be one hell of a team. But for some reason, I don't know why. I honestly don't understand it. He's got a good team. He's put together a good roster. I don't know what's clicking. A coaching staff wipe might do something for it. Maybe get a sexy free agent pickup at first base. That might do something. I just feel like they're just that one piece away from truly contending. Give them just a first baseman.
Yeah, I'd make it a first base piece.
Because when you're looking at this team, I don't see a whole lot of weakness. When you're looking towards the future, you've got a strong group of relievers, but your top guys, you got Campos, who's 32. You got Cody Allen, who's 32. You got Josh Edgin, that's 34. They're starting to get up there in age, and that's when you got to start looking to, you got to think, is this the year that I'm going to contend, or do I need to maybe flip these guys and start to build it again? And I think that they can contend. I really do. You just got to, like I said, just put in a piece here or there and just shake things up with your lineup. And I think that they can really do something next season.
Yeah, one of the issues I think I see with this roster, and again, yes, definitely give him props, but my first point about the first base was not directed at him. It was more general, what in the world is going on? Why can't we find decent first basemen? The problem with this roster, I think, is when you look up and down it, there's not a lot of home run power. And unfortunately, when you get into some leagues like this, unless you are covered with speed, you set your ballpark to be, big disadvantage. You crank up your pitching staff and you think, I'm going to beat them on pitching. They're going to come in with hitting, a home run hitting. I'm just going to run them out of the park. Unless you take that approach. They didn't have that much power this year. They only had, if you look up and down, they had one guy hit over 30, one hit 29, and then that was it. There was only one other guy who hit 20 home runs this year. That's an issue. If you've only got 2 guys or 3 guys in your lineup, everyday lineup, that can hit you 20 home runs in a year, you're going to have a long year. especially when the other guys are so far underneath. So when you're looking to fill that first base position, I think I would start by looking for a guy who's got nice on base, a nice home run count, and a guy who can truly come in and bring you the pop that this lineup needs. I don't know. That's my observation.
Yeah, and something when you're looking at all these teams that are potentially rebuilding and completely revamping their roster, something that you got to think about is what kind of theme is my team going to have? You know, you can't have great infield, great outfield, great on defense, got power, can't have great starting pitching and great reliever. You got to pick a few key points where you guys are truly going to shine. You can start with, maybe you just want to have a shutdown bullpen and mediocre starters, which I think is a solid way to go at it. That's pretty much how the O's have been doing it for the past few years. We've got Pineda, who's obviously our ace. That's our one guy. But besides that, we don't have guys putting up ridiculously good numbers as far as starting pitching goes. And I just think that every team needs to have a few key points to look at. Maybe just start with one of them. One season we'll start with our bullpen. We'll sign a few 25, 26-year-old guys that can really shut them down this year. And then next year we'll move on and we'll get some speed on the base paths and guys that can get on base as opposed to guys that smash it over the wall, because maybe that's not what this team is all about. Maybe that's not what you want out of these guys. So you really just got to assess what you want your team to be.
And then kind of piggybacking off that idea, for those owners who may be newer listening to this or maybe don't take note, set your settings and your ballpark accordingly. Especially like if you're playing in auto leagues or something like that, or a custom league that lets you change that. Or even in here, it's worth it to pay for it to set it up how you're going to run your team. For instance, if you're going to load your team up with speed and high on base percentage, and maybe guys that don't hit as many home runs, it would benefit you to put the park dimensions to big disadvantage for both sides of the plate. Don't worry so much about power for your hitters, which is what a lot of people look at. Go get those guys that have high on base, get on base a lot, that can steal bases, that have the speed, and then look at building a pitching staff that can sort of do the same thing, that can combat that can keep you in ball games, have a depth there and focus, spend your money there. Now, it would be counterintuitive to spend your money on starting pitchers and relief pitchers and not on power hitters if you set both of your ballparks to big boost. Then what you're doing is you're just setting up your starting pitching and your relief pitching to fail. You're setting them up to have horrible seasons, and you're not doing anything in your lineup to combat how many runs are going to be scored. So yes, you're going to play half your games away, but you need to understand that if you can play at home and win, 2/3 of your games at home, that gives you almost 60 wins right there. That's something to take advantage of and to think about. 60 wins is a lot. That means you only have to go on the road and win 1/3 of your games. If you set your strategy up right, you could be winning season in, season out. That's what separates an owner here on PC from being kind of not so great and struggling to figure things out to being great and setting up teams every year, knowing how to rebuild. Set yourself a strategy, set your settings, your strategy settings, and then match your ballpark to fit it. That would be the biggest thing that you can do as an owner.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And in a league like this, where you obviously can't change your park dimensions or anything like that, you still need to you need to fix your roster accordingly. If you're in a ballpark that favors lefties and is really bad on righties, then obviously you're going to want more lefties in your lineup. Same vice versa, any way you look at it. That's just something that you definitely need to take into consideration. Aside from just signing the best guy here or there, maybe take a guy that's not as good as this guy because he fits with your team style or your ballpark theme better. So I think that was a good point, Panda.
So with those suggestions in mind and those thoughts in mind that you guys should really kind of take a listen to and take to heart, we are now going to move on to a much lighter conversation, and that is we are joined by Goldencane, the master of coming up with our awesome name, our awesome podcast name, and our incredible artwork as well. So Goldencane, it is so awesome to have you here. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Well, I guess just give us a little bit of background about how you came up with this idea, what you were thinking about it, and just kind of the whole thought process, how you did it, because I'm sure we'd love to hear it. It's just, you know, it was awesome that you were able to do that for us, and we really appreciate it. So give us some backstory on it.
Okay, so in real life, I'm pretty much an amateur artist of sorts, as I took a lot of courses in the arts in school and private classes. So that led me to take on this challenge of sorts to draw the cover art for the podcast. So I've been thinking for the podcast, the name, for a while, and then I just got this lightning bolt in my head while I was working out in the gym. You know, I love to make good puns and other literally inspired jokes that elicit very high praise from my friends, like "shut the up." And I was going to elicit baseball related words in my head when it hit
Say
me.
that.
Shut the up. And when it hit me, pun intended. So that's when I came up with the name idea, BK Panda's Batting Practice, or BP. So I sent that over to BK, and then he gave us approval and asked me for an artwork, kind of jokingly, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I used my creative juices to create this artwork. So at first, I didn't really have like a sense of direction. So I just thought like, oh, okay, I'll just draw the concept art for each of the two guys. So Panda being a panda, like, you know, literally a panda swinging a bat in the Cleveland Indians jersey, while BK is pretty generic guy, also swinging a bat in the opposite stance with the words BK inscribed on the shirt. So that took about an evening for each of the concept art. And once that was all done, I got the two concept art together along with the actual the words in the cover, and put that over in my laptop, and that took about another evening. And when I was finally done with the optimization of the formatting and then the scaling of the individual objects, then I sent that over to BK and Panda, and you know, they liked it. So that was really fun for me. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do.
I'm honored, first off, because my name's first, even though it's more Panda's thing than mine. I'm honored to be the very generic white guy swinging a bat. That's great. And you know,
it's Hosmer.
It's Hosmer.
Hosmer for life.
Yeah.
Right-handed.
Well, and I don't know if you've seen Panda in real life, but I mean, you got it spot on. I mean, it looks just like him. It's great.
Just like him, right?
Yeah, that looks just like Panda right there. I thought that was great. I mean, I don't know if you were just going off of pictures of him or what, but you nailed it. Doesn't that look just like you?
Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, if you look at the picture closely, you can even see it almost looks like he added a little bit of girth, and like my back kind of sticks out a little bit more. I don't know if that was intentional or just the player, but it almost
fully intentional.
Okay, good. But I mean, you guys, you gotta click on this art. You gotta look at the detail just of everything. It's sweet. It's awesome. It's got full attention to detail. So gotta check it out. Give Goldencane some props when you see him around in the chat box, and let him know what an awesome job he did. And I'll be posting some photos to show you how much he just captured my likeness and just put it right there for everyone to see. So it's kind of scary, but you guys will get the bigger picture when I actually put up some real photos, how close he got of that. So be looking for those. But again, Goldencane, thank you so much for this. It was a great idea.
No problem.
And
I don't know if that's how you bat in real life, but you got to work on that stance a little bit. Just look at that's how you want it to be.
yeah,
Panda has more girth, so I mean, a flat-footed stance is kind of
doesn't even have to
it fits him. It fits him more.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. And the only reason, BK, your name is first is so that it can be BP, batting practice. That's the only reason. Just gonna throw that out there for you real quick.
Thanks for sending my dream crashing to the ground.
Yeah, that's the
You
business.
heard it here, guys. Panda is a dream crusher.
Crushing dreams. Crushing dreams. That's my goal in life. Speaking of crushing dreams, one team in the World Series is going to have their dreams crushed, dashed, and scattered across a empty ballpark come the end of this World Series coming up. And I mean, I think it's going to be a great series, but again, we can only have one winner, and that means we have one loser. Well, a whole set of losers, because it's a team. So this is going to be an interesting topic. We got 3 of us. It's going to be a lot of fun to break down, and so just kind of try to hang with us because this is going to get a little crazy. So we are going to start with the teams and the pitching matchups because pitching is just so important. It's what a lot of these teams are built around. We're looking at the starting pitching matchups. Keep in mind that in this league we go down to a 3-man rotation for the playoffs because of days off. And so we've got 3 matchups that will just repeat over and over this series. Not a whole lot of variety, but again, it's going to determine a lot. So the first one, game 1, is going to be Karnes versus, how do you pronounce that?
Odorizzi.
Odorizzi? Okay. I was like, what in the world is that name? Odorizzi. Karnes versus Odorizzi. So game 1, what you guys got?
Well, it's really thing about Odorizzi, you can look at his season stats, you can look at his real stats, but for him, it doesn't seem to matter in the playoffs. He's been on my team for all 3 of the playoff runs that we've been on, and it just seems like out of nowhere, he'll just come out and do what he needs to do in the playoffs, and he's really our main guy when it comes to playoff time. Really, Karnes is just ridiculous. He's going to be a free agent this year too. He's going to be getting paid, and he doesn't have much weakness. If you can hold him to maybe 6 innings, it's not even just about getting to him early and getting him to give up runs, because it's not likely that that's going to happen. What you have to do is get his pitch count up so that maybe he's gone after 6 innings, and then you can let their bullpen come in. And Pittsburgh really doesn't have that great of a bullpen. Really, their top guy looking here is maybe Rasmussen. I mean, they don't have a whole lot going in their pen. If you can get their pen out there, then I think that we can make some noise happen. But I don't see it happening in game 1. I think Karnes is just going to dominate no matter what Odorizzi can do, and Pirates are just going to take game 1 here.
I'm going to disagree, actually. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Odorizzi has a slight advantage over Karnes. And here's why. He's been on a roll lately, going the distance in 3 out of his last 4 games, struck out double-digit guys in 3 out of 4 games, and missing this week by 1 strikeout in one of the games. And he has not given up more than 5 hits in any start. That's elite numbers for just about anyone. Heck, for me, that's even more impressive than what Karnes has done in his recent starts. Even though he has not lost a game in his last 7 starts, the way Karnes has gotten the wins has been a lot less impressive than what Odorizzi has put together in his last 4 games, as he hasn't put a complete game performance despite having a higher pitch count, so to speak, and he's given up a greater walk per inning ratio. Remember now, your Orioles, they're very good at drawing walks, as they lead the league at an astonishing 577 walks, drawn for 6,147 at-bats, which is a ratio about 6% better than what Pirates have managed to do. So, given all that, if you guys can draw out maybe, 3 or 4 walks from Odorizzi, which is very much feasible given his recent performances. I think you guys could, potentially steal the game away from Pirates, and with Odorizzi's recent form, I think he can give you guys enough pitching dominance in this matchup to give you guys the wins.
Karnes is an MVP. There's a reason for that. Pirates, you don't stand a chance in games 1, 4, 7, so you better win the other ones. That's all I got to say about that. I mean, you can Dream Crusher. I know. I'm just coming down and leveling.
Yeah, you're just coming down, man. What the hell?
Maybe
you're just trying to kill me tonight, man. I have feelings too.
Yeah.
I have feelings. Bet you don't think about that.
Yeah, you gotta tone that down a little bit.
Man, I thought I was going wild with the team takeover, but you're hitting it where it hurts, man.
Yeah.
Telling me that my team can't win 1, 4, and 7. Can't. I mean, that means we gotta be perfect.
Well,
what are you trying to tell me here? What does that mean? We're getting swept? Is that what's about to happen to me?
No, I think the way you win games 1, 4, and 7 is kind of like Goldencane said, is you got to get Karnes out of the game by elevating that pitch count. You're not going to hit your way out of the game. You just look back at Karnes and what he's done. He does not give up 4 runs hardly at all. He did once here in the postseason, but that was to the Phillies, okay? When we look at the track record, when we look at the recent games, Philadelphia is a little bit tougher than the Astros. No offense, Astros, but I just feel like Philadelphia had more of a lineup to combat than what the Astros could do against Baltimore pitching. So, again, you got to hike the pitch count up. You got to get them on the ropes that way. You're not going to string a bunch together. He doesn't give up a ton of home runs. He doesn't let you, even if he gives up home runs, he doesn't let guys get on base. You got to get those numbers up, because if you can get Karnes out of the game, and we'll talk about this later, but if you can get into that Pirates bullpen, you're golden. You're going to score some runs. So I wouldn't say you can't win games 1, 4, and 7, but if Karnes goes 7 or 8 innings in all of those games, I think it's going to be very, very tough for Baltimore to win games 1, 4, and 7. So, just my opinion, I think Karnes has a very legitimate case for being an MVP this year, for being the Cy Young. I'd even pick him way early to be the World Series MVP. So, I think Baltimore's going to have their hands full. It'll be interesting, but again, I think you got to get him out early by hiking that pitch count up. Maybe you guys disagree, but that's my take on it.
I think they could do it. I think they got a good shot.
We're not going to outduel Karnes. That's the biggest thing. We can't try to outdo him. We can't try to go for the big knocks every time, like it seems like we kind of do. We'll be trailing a few runs going into the 6th, 7th, and then all of a sudden we'll just hit bombs, and that's it. You can't do that now. Guys to do that. You got to get what you can here and there. You can't.
You have to get on base. You just have to against this guy. You can't win using homers and dingers that like you guys been doing all season. You have to get on base.
Work the pitch count as much as possible. Even if you're not getting a walk, if you can get just a 6-pitch ground out. You work them to 6 pitches. Good job. Back of the lineup. Working the pitch count is going to be so crucial in this series against Karnes, especially Karnes, because he is the guy. He is the best pitcher in the MLB. I mean, there's no other way around it. That's what scares me about him.
Well, if we look at Game 2, we've got another intriguing matchup, and I think when I looked at this matchup, what makes it intriguing to me is Pomerantz. Now, if you put Pomerantz on Pittsburgh, oh dear goodness, it was going to be a slaughter. But because Pomerantz is on Baltimore, who has the pen to back him up, I think if you can get a couple innings out of Pomerantz, 3, 4, 5 innings out of him, and then have him turn it over, you might be looking good in this one, Baltimore. What are your guys' thoughts on your Game 2 matchup?
I'm very confident in what Pomeranz can do in this series and in this matchup particular. I think this is a perfect matchup for Pomeranz to really shine. And that being because Fires against lefties, he gets rocked. Not rocked like a typical rock you'll see, but as far as, top end starting pitchers goes, he gets rocked. Right now, our lefty lineup, we've got only one against, excuse me, let me rephrase that. When we're playing against a right-handed pitcher, we've got one righty in the lineup the whole time. And I think that's where Fires is going down. I think we're just gonna I don't think he can handle it. And that's why I think in games, is it 2 and 5? He just doesn't stand a chance. And back to Pomeranz. You get 4 good innings out of him, bullpen's going to shut him down from there. They've got a hell of an offense, but I'm confident in what Pomeranz can do because he's definitely our style pitcher. And he definitely complements the bullpen. And that's going to be the biggest factor here, as it is just about every other year. Team with the best bullpen can carry you the farthest. I think that's going to say a lot in this series.
Yeah, I agree with you here. Yeah, just totally agree with you. I'm gonna give Fierce a slight edge on the head-to-head matchup, but like as you said, they're not gonna get past the 5th inning, because the offenses they're too good, and it's gonna be a battle of the bullpens from then on, and I trust Baltimore's bullpen to be a lot more effective in getting guys out more than the Pittsburgh. So which is why overall in this matchup, I'm gonna give Baltimore the slight edge.
And again, I'm gonna contradict myself a little bit. All right, Pomeranz will either go out there, give us a good 5 innings of work, give up 1, maybe 2 runs, and obviously our offense should 90% of the time be able to match that. Give it to the bullpen, we're good. On that off day, 1 every 3-4 games, he'll have that game where he won't get past the 3rd inning, gives up 4 or 5 runs, and leaves us in a bad spot. And that's what I fear this game. I'm really banking on that he's going to be the Pomeranz that we signed, the Pomeranz that we are putting our confidence in to start game 2, excuse me. That it's just really a gamble as far as I'm concerned.
Well, is there any thought maybe for Baltimore in this series? Is there maybe any leaning towards, because of that fact, do you start someone else?
No, I mean, I definitely went and I played around with the bullpen, the starting lineup a little bit, and the only other guy I could maybe see was Aaron Blair, and I don't trust him. Playoffs, he doesn't ever come in big for us. He's been getting beat up a little bit the last 4 or 5 starts. I just don't trust him right now. I'm just going for the gamble in this series because that's what it takes sometimes. Sometimes you just got to go put all your chips in, go for the gamble. Either this is going to pay off big time or we're just going to completely screw ourselves and leave our vulnerabilities wide open. And I'm just really putting my confidence in the fact that Pomeranz will show up when it's time. And if he doesn't game 2, might have to look at something else. But for now, I'm going with the gamble. Because I think that's how you got to play it in a 7-game series.
Well, and I think the gamble might be worth it here in this situation because you do have a day off before Game 3. And when you look at the Game 3 matchup, you do have Pineda going. So not only are you going to have a day off to rest your bullpen, but you're going to have a guy who can come in and chew up innings to give your bullpen even more rest. So even if Pomeranz comes out, lays an egg, goes 0.2 of an inning, and then he's out of there and you have to turn it over to your bullpen to try to win a game, I think this is the best place to put him. If Pomeranz was starting Game 3, I think you'd be in trouble especially if he had a really bad game. But this is the best spot to put him because of that third game. So third game is Cueto for Pittsburgh and Pineda for Baltimore. Both guys are pretty similar. You hope Pineda saves your bullpen. What are your thoughts? Who do you think comes out ahead in this situation?
I hand this one off to Kane. I want to see what he has to say first.
Okay. Well, for me, it's pretty obvious. It's Pineda. Pineda has the obvious advantage over Cueto in this matchup. He's just simply on another class than him. Pineda did lose to the Pirates this season, but it was due to not having enough run support and losing it by a scoreline of measly 2-1 after going 8 innings. And Cueto, just by looking at his stats, he's definitely going to give up runs in this game. That Baltimore offense is just way too good for him to handle. And I believe Pineda is going to shut down the Pirates time and time again to give Baltimore a huge advantage in this matchup that they must take advantage of.
One thing that I look at in Pineda, and I've been bringing this up with all the pitchers here, but with him, when it comes postseason time, when it comes World Series time especially, the man's untouchable.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen anybody be able to stop him in the World Series. Even last season, he started 2 World Series games. I believe he threw 8 shutout innings against the Cardinals in game 2. And then next game, he ended up with the no decision, but still pitched a hell of a game. I mean, when it comes playoff time and World Series time, nobody's going to stop Pineda. Not Cueto, not Gregory Polanco, not Bailey Wilson, not Andrew McCutchen, just nobody. You're not going to get to him, I don't think. I'm very confident in that, if nothing else, in this team and in this series.
So we've concluded that the only thing that will stop Pineda is a deflated baseball to the head by BB Fan. Is that correct?
Not allowed to speak on that matter at this time. Get back to me after the World Series.
A little bit of touch and go there. Bullpens. Who's got the better pen, and what do you think the results are going to be because of that this series?
I don't think there's any question that the Orioles have the better bullpen here. We've got, let's go back and look here. Oh, Shea Simmons, Hayward Myers, Wei Chung Wang, Tyson Shreve. All these guys can be closers on just about any other team, but they're all on a committee here. And that's what I like having with my team. I like having that, just put a guy in here for 2/3 of an inning, another guy in here for 1/3 of an inning. Just give everybody a little bit of work every day. And that's what's really working for this team. I think that they complement our team better than anybody. This season, 3 of those guys had an ERA under 2. I don't think there's any doubt that we have the better bullpen this year. No slight to Pittsburgh's. I mean, I think that's definitely Pittsburgh's weakest point, though. They only had, I think, one guy that was around a 3 ERA. I think their best, I'll have to go look at this. Yeah, I mean, their best reliever had a 2.68 ERA, which not bad, but that's not what you want. Who's supposed to be your main guy? And their closer had a 3.68 ERA. I think we'll definitely take advantage of that and see what Kane's got to say.
Yeah, there's no question. If I had to give a grade, Baltimore's bullpen, I give them an A-. Pittsburgh, I give it a C+. There's no question. I mean, Baltimore has just got better talent, better top-tier bullpen arms than Pittsburgh. Waller set up a clearly defined roles for some of his guys, like setup and closer, and that's probably going to backfire in that it's not going to give him the flexibility that the bullpen needs in this time to really take advantage of matchup problems that they could potentially seek out. And Baltimore, they've been doing this bullpen by committee for the whole season, and they'll just have greater flexibility in the games that will follow.
Well, I definitely think it'd be bad for me not to point out that I think the bullpen is definitely the biggest difference I saw, and I really think that this series could come down to possibly this difference if it had to. So, um, but the pitching is not everything. We do have to look at who they're pitching to. So across the pond on the other side, we're gonna take a look at these outfielders and Goldencane. I'm gonna start with you. If you had to pick one of these outfielders or one of these outfields as a whole, or however you want to break it down to be better, which one are you taking and why?
I'm gonna take the Pirates. They've got not just one, but two 50-plus home run hitters, and that's just a tremendous advantage going to this matchup. Yeah, and I know that Baltimore has a 61 home run hitter in Corey Dickerson, but when you got two guys that can jack the same amount of home runs and the same amount of at bats as Dickerson has done, it's just there's no question. When you got two grade A outfielders compared to one a Baltimore Oriole for the Baltimore Orioles, I just don't see this as a pretty tight race for the outfield comparison. So I'm definitely giving the Pirates an advantage over the Baltimore here.
I think that these outfielding cores are very, very close as far as talent-wise, and you really got to go off of what is more important. If you think it's, it comes down to how the series is played out. If it comes down to who's the teams that are just jacking it and knocking it out of the park every game, then I give the Pirates the clear advantage, with the exception of Corey Dickerson, but he's really an outlier here, I think, as far if you're matching up here.
Yeah.
If you're looking at the ones that can just get on base, do their thing, then I'd have to give it to the Orioles. You got Marshall Bland leading off. He hit 324 last year, 387 on base, and stole 69 bases. If you can get in that catcher's head, get in the pitcher's head, steal a few bases here and there, then I'd have to give it to the Orioles then. It really just depends on what kind of series is played out here and getting a feel for how you want to manage it.
Yeah, I think when you look at both outfielders, I came out with they're both good. They're both going to be a valuable part of this series, and I think they both have speed, they both have defense, and they both have the power, and they're all spread out between different guys. So you can make a case, and you could point to, the 69 stolen bases by Bland, but then if you look over at Polanco of the Pittsburgh Pirates, well, he's got 64. So, and a similar stolen base percentage. So you just go back and forth, and these guys are just so similar. It's just, you can't, I don't know, I can't give a clear edge to either one of these teams. I think they're both going to be important, but I think it would kind of be, tough for me to pick one over the other because they both do everything very well. But saying that, what I don't think is one thing that I do think that you could choose would be infield. And real quick, my point of view is that they're both even from the real stats, but I think Baltimore's infield, and we're including catcher in that, has been much more productive with their real stats than the Pittsburgh infield has. But I'll just kind of open this up to you guys, and what do you think on that?
Obviously, neither of the infields are as great as the outfields. You got I think the number 1 and 2 best outfields going at it, but not to slight the infielders here. I'd like to give the advantage to Baltimore, not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I think from a production standpoint, nothing else, we've definitely got the edge here. And yeah, that's about all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I'm also going to give Baltimore the edge here. And, Pittsburgh does have more speed in the infield, but, the Orioles infield, they're just really good at getting on the base. You look at Iggy Ag's 371 OBP, Javier Nunes 358, Gordon 338, 333, and then just Kyle Gray 335. And one thing that I have to say about the Pirates' speed is that they've been abusing it a little bit. If you look at their success percentage, it's not all that great. Larry Bowers only 64%, Josh Bell only 63%, Gordon Crady only 57%, Junior Young 62%, Wilson Bailey only 52%. So I mean, they really have to be more selective in how they're going to go about in stealing bases. And I think that if they continue to, just fire away at, and giving the go-ahead signal every single time, that's going to really hurt them in the on-base department, and therefore the run production department. And this could really turn out to be the key of the series.
Yeah, and definitely against one of the better catchers, strong arm catcher, and Kevin Plawecki too. If they're going to keep trying to run on him like that, this season they had 65% stolen base percentage. That'll drop down significantly if they keep trying to run on him like that.
Yeah.
Another thing I did want to point out about the teams as a whole, you were mentioning the power of the Pirates outfield, which is ridiculously good. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
You got Polanco, Ladd, McCutcheon with 59, 52, 31 home runs. That's incredible. But when you're looking at all together as a team, the Orioles had 308 home runs this season as opposed to the Pirates with 277. If you're looking at total overall power, obviously we got the edge here. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that are hitting 30-plus home runs, 7 guys with 20-plus, and all but one of the guys who only played 66 games have 13-plus home runs. All these guys can produce and go yard. And, yeah. I'm tired.
Thank you for that wonderful moment that I now need to go back and edit out. And you guys are making my job real fun today.
I gave you plenty to work with in the
team. Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Ouch. Shoot.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on, please. Oh.
All right. So to finish up, we have our keys to the series. So what we're going to conclude with is our keys to the series. And then we're each going to give our prediction, popular or not, who's going to win, how many games. Goldencane, you're a guest. We're going to give you the floor, let you take away the honors. Start with you. What are your keys?
So my keys for Baltimore, you have to try to knock out the Pirates out of games early. Put early pressure on the Pirates in games. If they can put distance between themselves and the Pirates in the first or second inning, just like they did in the Astros series, then they've got a great shot at winning the World Series. Which brings me to the next point, or suggestion for BK rather. I think that Baltimore has to put Ajax in this 2-hole and move Nunes to the 6th spot. Here's why. Ajax is much more likely to get on base than Nunes, who struck out, I mind you, a ridiculous amount of 264 times over 657 at-bats. And by doing so, Baltimore is going to get more extra run opportunities for Dickerson and Cutler to potentially drive them in with dingers. And I think that Nunes' pop is much more valuable in the 6th hole, as he won't have to feel the pressure to advance the runners in front of him necessarily, and really just focus on making good contact with the ball. So if you want to win the series, BK, I think you have to put Ajax in the 2-hole as opposed to Nunes. Now for Pittsburgh, they have to steal with discretion. As I said before, the batters are just way too trigger happy with stealing bases. If the team overall, if they're not going to have a success rate over 2/3 of the time, which majority of the batters don't have, then they're doing more harm than good to their chances of winning the series. The inability for them to have efficient base running is going to be detrimental to creating run scoring opportunities with the starters that they are going up against. And they have to be much more selective. I can't emphasize this enough. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So who's your pick to win this series, and how many games do you think it'll take?
I got the Baltimore in 6. I think they're gonna drop a game in their home field early on, but they're going to win 2 out of 3 in Pittsburgh, and then win their consecutive title in their home in the game 6. And I think that Ajax, as I mentioned before, is going to be the difference maker in the series with his ability to get on base, hit for good contact, and be very selective and very efficient in base running.
Well, I appreciate that for starters. Everything is taken into consideration, especially from another value opinion of another owner. I will start out by saying this series is a little bit different from ones that you might typically see in the World Series. Usually you're looking at the matchups, and it comes down to which team can outlast the other and who can make those big plays when it really matters. And that's not being taken into consideration for me this time. It's really going to be about who can work the pitch counts, who can get on base and score runs the first 4 innings of the game. That's going to be the biggest deciding factor here, is who can score at the beginning of the game. Because really, from the Orioles standpoint, you're going to want to get Karnes, Cueto, Fires off the field as soon as you can, just so we can take advantage of a possible weak spot in the Pirates bullpen. And that's going to be huge in deciding this series, game by game. And from the Pirates standpoint, you want to, see if you can just get what you can here and there, because we don't have that great of starters. Obviously, Pineda's the best we have to offer here. Putting aside, what either any of the players do in just the playoffs, World Series. If you can just get the rare bad games out of Pineda, Odorizzi, and take advantage of a possible weak spot in Pomeranz, if you can do that and rack up the runs at the beginning of the game and just try to hold on for the rest of it, because you're not going to get more than a run at a time on this Baltimore bullpen. You're just not. If you do, it might happen one game where they just completely fall apart, but it's not going to happen after that. It doesn't. I might sound cocky, but I'm just trying to be real about it. Pittsburgh needs to rack up as many runs as they can at the beginning and just hold on for dear. Okay. I was almost going to get a bleep there. For dear life. All right. You're welcome for not letting that one happen, Panda. I have the utmost respect for Dale Waller. I think it's going to be the most exciting and anticipated World Series to date. The thing that scares me about the Pirates, though, is the 1-2-3 punch of Karnes, Fires, Cueto. Conclusion, my confidence has been high all season. Why stop now? I'm going to take my O's winning in 7, walk-off fashion to end it at home. And I'm going to go ahead and give the World Series MVP to Michael Pineda again, just like he did in, I don't even know what year we won it. That's how great of an owner I am. Was it 2019? I don't know. But I'm gonna give World Series MVP to Pineda. And thank you.
So really quickly, my keys to success are, for Pittsburgh, you got to keep the bullpen off the field. Your starting pitchers have to go pretty far into the games. If you start trotting out middle relief pitchers, I think Pittsburgh's in a world of hurt. Infielders got to step up and produce. They got to stop getting picked off on the bases, and they need to produce when they're in the game. That's going to be a difference for Pittsburgh. If they can step up and get that extra production out of the infield, I think they have a lineup that could potentially cause some problems for Baltimore. Now, if we flip to the other side, keys for Baltimore. Baltimore needs to pull the starting pitching early and let the bullpen take over. You can't get a manager here in the middle of the game that wants to leave a guy in and he gets tattooed, gives up that home run. You can't do that. You got to pull the starting pitchers. You got to trust your pen, and you got to let your pen do what it's done to get you there. And on the flip side, you have to not only hit Pittsburgh pitching early, but you also need to drive up those pitch counts early. And as often as you can, you've got to make them work, because if you can get to their pen, you can win the games. Now, in sticking with my crushing dreams and kicking sand in the eyes and, destroying castles, I'm picking Pittsburgh in 7. I think starting pitching beats everything else. I'm very sorry, Baltimore, but I think Karnes, he's got 3 games. I think he wins 1, 4, and then the 7, the clincher, and Baltimore is very sad. So that is my unpopular opinion, as you can tell.
Oh man,
I think it would be better.
Yeah, I'll let you know if it's an unpopular opinion right now. I'll let you know.
Very unpopular.
And that's exactly what I think.
Karnes is the MVP. And I think Pittsburgh wins it in 7, a close series. I think they keep their bullpen off the field, so you don't really see that weakness. But that is my insight / unpopular opinion, as you can tell.
Karnes wins MVP, goes on, signs with the Baltimore Orioles the following season. We kick the crap out of everybody, 162-0, sweep everybody in the playoffs, and bam. That'll be my big middle finger to you, Panda.
You kidding? I'm already buttering him up so he'll come over to LA. I've been working this plan for since the beginning of the season, man. This is what it is. Remember the award show?
I hope he goes to Goldencane's team. I hope he goes to the Braves just because of that. Not that
we got some good talent in our just waiting to be used, and this free agency and the next drive is going to be really critical for our team to take the next step, and I think we got a good shot to do it.
Well, We'll have to see where he ends up, but I've already slipped him some money under the table and given him some free promo here, and he'll be in an LA uniform before you can blink your eyes once the off season starts, because he knows, he's listening. He's got this all down.
All right, Kane. I'm going to give you 47 seconds to tell Karnes right now why he needs to be an Atlanta Brave. Go.
Okay, so listen up. When you got Hingle McCringleberry as your manager and the greatest of all time, Sam Hinkie, as the baseball operations guy, you have to just come over. And, we've got a great young core just building up, with guys like, let's see here. We've got Harris Strickland, the second baseman. We've also got Jerry Huber, another second baseman who's already 908 OPS with a superstar potential, I mind you. We got Ryan Anderson, he can just plug that hole right up. We got Carl Lamb and the first base.
You're out of time. All right, I'll tell you why you need Karnes. I'll tell you, Karnes. 3 straight AL pennants. Then I'll just last 40 seconds will just be me staring at him. No, but I mean, when I'm looking at my team going into the offseason, we're losing a lot of guys. So it kind of worries me that this might be the last year that we are really the team to beat in the AL. We're losing Wong, Shreve, Farquhar out of our bullpen. That's 4 of our top 5 guys right there. We're losing everyday players in Plawecki, O'Malley, D'Estrada, and of course losing Pineda. I mean, I don't think we're going to re-sign them all, and it kind of worries me. It's going to be good for some other teams to jump on that talent, though, and I could see some of the guys we were talking about in the team takeover potentially checking that out and jumping on some of my scraps that don't love me anymore.
And with that, we have officially run out of time. So I thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I thank you guys for listening. Once again, make sure you give a big old virtual high five to Goldencane through the chat box, or message him or something. Give him a high five. Let him know what an awesome job he did coming up with a name and the artwork. Goldencane, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Bragan, as always, it was a pleasure disagreeing with you about nearly everything. So we had a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we hope you guys have a great night.
Tune in next week, because might be in talks with Mr. Hal Matthew of the Chicago White Sox. Give him his own little rant section. So have your bleeper ready there, Panda, if you didn't have to tonight. But, Hal, I'd really love to have you on here, because actually I'm going to keep this PG from here on out. But you know what? Yeah. Tune in next week, guys. Good luck to you, Waller, in the World Series. Better team will come out on top. Don't know who that is yet, but I'm excited for it. So, see you next week, guys.